Welcome back to Press Conference. We've been talking about cancel culture with my guest today, Brian Hart, the founder and president of Flackable Public Relations here in the Philadelphia region. He's national recognition for his campaigns on behalf of his clients in financial services and professional services. And we were talking before the break, Brian, about a little bit of what you had recently gone through. But what I'm interested in going forward about is how do you counsel your clients? You're working with some larger brands than I am. I have a lot of small businesses and individuals that I work with. But how can we counsel our clients on the pitfalls of social media and cancel culture so that they can perhaps overcome this phenomenon?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things to do is to build in a crisis response team. And the goal of having a crisis response team is not necessarily that you're expecting crises to happen. Ideally, if you've got a good crisis response team, you're not responding at all. You're proactively squashing these things before it blows up into a big crisis. But you need to know when a bad public sentiment goes out there, whether it's one bad review or one negative Facebook post or whatever, and this is very applicable to small businesses. That one bad review, that one post, you need to know who all that response is going through, who the decision makers are, what the progression is going to be like to either act or choose not to act. You don't want to wait until it happens
Right.
and everybody look at each other wondering what's going on, because that's when you get the knee-jerk reactions that can make one little Facebook post a massive problem.
It's very
So that's
interesting.
the first step. Start there. And Jim, I'll let you add on if you've got some thoughts on that.
Well, it's interesting to me that you mentioned that because people think of crisis management in a lot of different ways. And I recently encountered a situation with one of my clients who is a small business person who had to let a few employees go 2 years ago when there was a change in the company. And one of those past employees has written bad things about the business on Glassdoor. I think it's called Glassdoor. And we were trying to find strategies to overcome that. And one of the things that you mentioned as far as crisis management is helping to make sure that that doesn't happen. If you can prevent that from happening, if you can work with your employees to make sure that you're managing their social media as far as in relation to the company, or you're managing their interactions with people when it comes in under the rubric of your company. That seems to be a great way to kind of preemptively or proactively prevent those things from happening, is a communication policy that encompasses social media and encompasses representing your employer in the public sphere.
Yeah, I agree. And you also need to know what your brand is. I've represented some fire brands and do represent some people who aren't afraid to be a little bit controversial.
Sure.
And to stir the pot. I love that. I do a little bit of that myself because it's built into our brand.
Right.
But you need to know what your brand is, and obviously, if you've got a more conservative brand, you're probably going to get more backlash if you go off brand and jump into the mud a little bit, or overreact to some criticism or whatnot.
Yeah. That's
Whereas
true.
the fire brands have they got a little bit of Teflon on them. They know, given just the nature of their brand, they can absorb hits, and they're gonna get hits because they are, challenging the status quo, and if they're doing their job right, they are building some enemies. That's what happens when you challenge the status quo or form strong opinions or passionate stances on certain issues and topics. Not everybody's going to agree with you. That's okay.
Yeah,
That's what's missing in social media right now. People need to realize it's okay to disagree with
that's
somebody.
right. That's right. We might not all agree on everything. We can agree on some things, we can disagree on other things, but we can be civil. I think, I think the next wave of social media is civil media, where we're being more civilized with each other, and we can be more responsible in our own opinions and responsible with recognizing other people's right to have those opinions.
Yeah.
I think
No,
that would be a
I
great
absolutely
next
agree.
step for, as opposed to say doxing, where everybody's address is exposed and contact their employer, contact their friends, contact their clients, and give them a hard time for even being associated with you. It seems to be one of those other phases of cancel culture that can really hurt a small business or an individual just for having an opinion.
Sure. Yep.
What are some of the things that you see happening? Do you see some of these smaller social media tools, which I have not really explored, but are there going to be other tools that are going to kind of supplant the Twitters and Facebooks of the world, or do you just see that being kind of like a closed circuit right now?
Yeah. Well, you're going to continue to see alternative platforms go out there. So, as more platforms go out and become viable, you're going to see a niching off of a little bit of the existing platforms. Clubhouse made a lot of noise during the COVID era. Now we'll wait and see what the future of Clubhouse is. It looked very promising in the beginning. I think it's losing a little bit of steam, but that doesn't mean it's going away. It could be acquired. It could evolve. All of these platforms eventually evolve when they hit a hurdle or when they hit a slow point. So
Right.
we'll see what happens there. But Clubhouse, I see tapping. Clubhouse, I actually see as that almost that merging of the LinkedIn and Twitter crowd, but you're taking the more sophisticated, potty trained Twitter users and mixing them up with the LinkedIn crowd. That's
That's a
what
great way
was
to
the most
describe it.
appealing and promising to me about that platform. Now that's just one platform
Yeah.
that's come out. There's a lot of other ones, but I think you are going to see a lot of niching off. If you remember, 6 months ago there was a big exodus from Twitter,
Yeah.
or within the past 6 months, of people of a certain political affiliation who felt that Twitter wasn't
Wasn't right for them.
necessarily fair or
Yeah.
ideologically diverse. Whether you agree or disagree with that, they migrated to other platforms that they thought could better accommodate whatever they were trying to do. So, yeah, you're going to continue to see a niching off. Absolutely, I think that's a trend to look to.
What do you say to your clients who are interested in places like Clubhouse or interested in doing more on social media? How do you caution them as far as, you mentioned crisis management and crisis prevention, if you will, or being forewarned and forward thinking. But what are some of the other things that you might say to your clients as far as where they need to be or what they should be looking for to not get canceled?
Right. Well, I mean, definitely go to the platforms where your target publics are going to be, um, but understand that you are going to have some people who, for one reason or another, are biased against your brand or don't like your brand, who are also on those platforms. Um, know who you are, know what you stand for, know what your brand is, know what you're willing to absorb. The more outspoken you are, the more backlash is going to come back at you. So you need to know your tolerance for criticism. The more you go out and criticize others or challenge the status quo, the more you're probably going to get back to you. It's not necessarily equal. It can be very disproportionate. One a little small criticism can get you a whole lot of backlash.
Sure.
Um, but make sure that you're where your tribe is, um, where your clients are, where your prospective clients are,
Sure.
where your fan base is. That's a big part of it. And then those platforms where they are unlikely to be aligned with your values and your brand,
Get
probably
out of there.
stay off of them.
Yeah, stay away from
Because
there.
there's little upside, but there's still potential downside.
Yeah.
There's risk on any of these platforms. So if the upside doesn't match the risk that you're taking from being on there, putting content on there, putting perspectives out there, then maybe consider not being on there at all.
That's a great point. I've mentioned that to several of my clients over the last few years, especially, and with the emergence of things like TikTok, well, we should be on TikTok. Well, what type of a business are you in? Well, I service, I work in the, for lawyers well, are lawyers really going to be using TikTok to get connected with your company? Probably not. Or are you going to be working with teenagers and millennials and others who are using TikTok more frequently than say a business client might be? And they go, yeah, probably. Okay, well then you need to be there. But as you said, make sure it's where your audience and your potential audience is going to be. Don't just saturate every medium. We're beyond the period where we could do mass marketing on every channel and sell across all these different channels at once. I think, Brian, that there's a lot more that you and I could probably cover. We probably would need another half hour at least to do so, but I really want to thank you for your time today, and I really appreciate your thoughts on this. It's one of these topics that continues to be prominent in my thinking and my advice to my clients, and as I'm sure it is for you. And I look forward, hopefully we can have you back in a couple weeks and have a further conversation about this.
Love to. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you again, Brian. Brian can be reached, what's the best way to get in touch with you, Brian?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Brian Hart PR. You can go to my website, flackable.com, or look me up on LinkedIn. Just do a search for Brian Hart. I should pop right up.
Wonderful. And I encourage our viewers today to take a look. We're in competition, but we're also colleagues, and we're also growing as friends. So I really appreciate your time today, Brian, and congratulations again on all the great work that you do. And I want to thank our viewers for tuning in today. We look forward to seeing you all again very, very soon. If you have any further questions or you need to get in touch with me or have me send a message to Brian, you can email me at jim@jhdenterprises.com or give me a call, 215-266-5943. As I said, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you all again very, very soon.